Thank you so much for joining us for CBN NewsWatch. I'm Ephraim Graham. Ahead today, the battle over a Palestinian state in Israel and at the United Nations, including the debate over whether Israel should annex parts of the biblical lands of Judea and Samaria in the West Bank. All of this coming as another drone fired by the Houthis hits Israel. We're going to bring you the story from Jerusalem. Here in the United States, another deadly act of political violence as a gunman kills one and critically injures two others at an immigration facility in Dallas before killing himself. Millions of Christians once lived in the Middle East. Now they have been wiped out and only a handful are left after a widespread ethnic and religious cleansing. We're going to show you what is being done to stop it. And God on the move on another college campus. We're going to hear about a gospel and worship event where many came to the Lord and they were baptized. All those stories and more right now on CBN NewsWatch.
This is CBN NewsWatch.
On this Thursday, the 25th of September, we're going to begin in Israel's ongoing political and diplomatic battle against the establishment of a Palestinian state, as Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu arrives in the United States to take on that issue at the United Nations tomorrow. And back in Israel, a Houthi drone injured more than 20 people in the Israeli resort town of Eilat yesterday. Israel's defense minister is promising a devastating response. CBN Middle East Bureau Chief Chris Mitchell, he's bringing us the story now, reporting from Jerusalem.
The drone, videotaped from multiple angles on social media, slipped through Israeli defenses and left at least 22 people wounded, two seriously. Defense Minister Israel Katz said the Houthi terrorists refused to learn from Iran, Lebanon, and Gaza and will learn the hard way. Whoever harms Israel will be harmed sevenfold. Before leaving for New York to address the UN General Assembly, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu delivered a message to the people of Israel and denounced those calling for a Palestinian state.
At
the UN General Assembly, I will speak our truth, the citizens of Israel, the truth of the IDF soldiers of our country. I will denounce those leaders who, instead of denouncing the murderers, rapists, and child burners, want to give them a state in the heart of the land of Israel. This will not happen.
U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio told CBS News that the declaration stopped the ceasefire hostage negotiations.
The impact it has had is it actually derailed, it made talks that were going on, it made it even harder to get Hamas to enter into concessions that might have brought this to an end. And look, we think there's a window of opportunity right now to pursue it.
After President Trump's speech at the UN on Tuesday, he met with a number of Arab and Muslim leaders and presented a comprehensive plan to end the war in Gaza. It calls for an immediate ceasefire, the release of all hostages, a gradual Israeli withdrawal from Gaza, and a role for Arab and Muslim countries in the region to administer Gaza during a post-war transition period. Reportedly, President Trump also said he would stop Israel from declaring sovereignty over the biblical heartland of Judea and Samaria. Oren Seliger of the Yessa Council, a group representing communities in Judea and Samaria, told CBN News that declaring sovereignty is a way to stop a Palestinian state.
We have to basically end that dream and end that fantasy. The way to do that is to make it clear that we are here and we are here to stay. We do that by declaring sovereignty on Judea and Samaria.
Now all eyes are on Netanyahu's speech on Friday and a planned meeting between President Trump and Netanyahu at the White House on Monday.
And Chris Mitchell joins us now. So, Chris, both Israel and the U.S. are firmly opposed to a Palestinian state, and it seems unlikely it will happen. So why are so many countries still pushing for this?
Well, Ephraim, I think a couple of reasons. First of all, external diplomatic pressure from other countries and also internal public pressure. Pro-Hamas and pro-Palestinian protests have had an impact, I think, especially in the UK, with literally hundreds of thousands of pro-Palestinian and pro-Hamas demonstrators out in the streets. Images of devastation in Gaza have really had a hard thing, public image against Israel and for the Palestinians, even though many people believe the destruction wouldn't be there if Hamas had surrendered, if it would end the war and release all the hostages. It also gives the Palestinian Authority a stronger claims in international law with these declarations of a Palestinian state. And many people still have faith in what's called the two-state solution. It seems logical or fair for two states, as the mantra goes, living side by side in safety and security. But others against the two-state solution said that's been tried for nearly 80 years since the partition plan, the UN partition plan in 1947, also the Oslo Accords that began in 1993, and don't believe that if it hasn't worked in decades, will it work now?
Israeli annexation of parts of the West Bank is now a hot issue. How would that move help to stop the creation of a Palestinian state?
Well, geographically, it may render a contiguous Palestinian state impossible. We reported not long ago about what's called the E1 corridor. Israel has announced they're going to be building about enough room for 70,000 Israelis to live in that area. That separates Bethlehem and Ramallah, not too far outside of Jerusalem. And so it would make a geographical continuous state largely irrelevant. And as Marco Rubio said in his interview there on CBS News, no matter how many declarations are being made, it won't bring about a Palestinian state. And other questions, many people are saying, what will a Palestinian state look like? There was a good friend, David Bedin, asked some of these questions. Will a planned Palestinian state abolish the Palestinian Charter, which mandates the destruction of Israel? Would it revoke the law that guarantees salaries to anyone who murders a Jew? So there's a lot of questions remaining. Even if a Palestinian state was ever implemented, what would it look like? And would it actually, one other question, would it remove text from the curriculum for school children that glorifies those that murder Jews?
Israel's foreign minister says Israel will not annex parts of the West Bank now under the control of the Palestinian Authority. And President Trump reportedly told Arab leaders this week he will try to stop it. What's likely to happen?
Well, Gideon Sar in an interview recently said there's really no intention of discussing annexation of Palestinian Authority territories because they don't want to control the Palestinians in their controls in areas where the Palestinian Authority has control. The Judea and Samaria, as people call the West Bank, has been divided up into three sections, A, B, and C. So A is controlled mainly by the Palestinian Authority, B is joint control, and C is Israeli control. And so what he says, Gideon Sar says, what can be discussed is implementing Israeli law on Israeli communities where they are not under Palestinian Authority control. So these are discussions that will likely take place once Prime Minister Netanyahu returns from Washington after his talks with President Trump, and what can be done into these circumstances between Israel, Jerusalem, and Washington.
What role does the Abraham Accords play in all this?
Well, a big role right now, Ephraim, because the UAE actually 5 years ago, when they were on the cusp of enacting the Abraham Accords, there was a UAE op-ed in a Hebrew newspaper called Yediot Harnot, and they said at that time that annexation will not happen if Israel goes ahead and declares sovereignty. It seems like the UAE is having another kind of veto about that, as well as many of these Arab and Muslim nations, that they won't enter into a post-war Gaza if there's Israel declares sovereignty over parts of Judea and Samaria.
Chris al-Shara, former al-Qaeda commander, is now president of Syria, speaking at the United Nations. Former al-Qaeda commander also spoke at the UN Wednesday. What did he say, and how was it received by Israel?
Well, Ephraim, he criticized Israel for the airstrikes in Syria, and that's what's been happening ever since last December. Israel is doing what it can to prevent any rise of military threats on Israel's border. He said he supported the Palestinians. There are ongoing talks with Israel right now, but Israel plans to maintain control of buffer areas. And it was shocking for some. Just a couple of years ago, al-Shara had a $10 million bounty on his head. He's an Islamist, founded al-Nusra Front, and some people wonder, does a leopard change its spots? Is he really an Islamist at heart, or now is he a statesman that's being lauded in the Western countries?
Our CBN News Middle East Bureau Chief Chris Mitchell, thank you so much, as always, for your insights. Look forward to checking back with you tomorrow as well. Coming up, another act of political violence in America after a gunman opened fire at a facility in Dallas Wednesday from a nearby roof. We're going to hear what investigators and experts are saying about this deadly attack. We've got the story for you when we come back. You're watching CBN NewsWatch. One person was killed and 2 others critically wounded after a gunman opened fire at an immigration and customs enforcement facility in Dallas. It happened yesterday. The shooter turned the gun on himself, taking his own life. Police say a shell casing found near the gunman had the words anti-ICE written on it. CBN's Jenna Browder is on the story.
Authorities are calling it an act of targeted violence after a gunman opened fire from a rooftop outside an immigration and customs enforcement detention facility in Dallas. 1 detainee died and 2 others were injured. Authorities say the gunman was 29-year-old Joshua John, who fired randomly at the building and a van filled with detainees before turning the gun on himself.
Rounds that were found near the suspected shooter contain messages that are anti-ICE in nature.
Authorities releasing this photo, the words anti-ICE written on a shell casing found near the gunman. Not dissimilar to Charlie Kirk's alleged assassin, who also wrote on his ammunition. Donnell Harvin, former D.C. Chief of Homeland Security and Intelligence, last night on CBN's Faith Nation.
These folks emulate each other. I don't like to use the word copycat because they're not actually doing the same thing, but they're taking some of the same tactics, techniques, and procedures that we've seen. It's intended to send a specific message. It's intended to really stoke fear in the population that they're targeting.
Vice President J.D. Vance responding to the attack.
There's some evidence that we have that's not yet public, but we know this person was politically motivated.
And Texas Senator Ted Cruz on the ground in Dallas with sharp words for Democrats and their language about ICE.
This must stop. To every politician who is using rhetoric demonizing ICE and demonizing CBP, the divisive rhetoric tragically has real consequences.
No ICE agents were hurt in this shooting, but officials say threats and attacks against ICE agents are up 1,000% since January. Jenna Browder, CBN News.
Still ahead, we're going to look at the genocide in the Middle East, and it is not against Palestinians. Millions of Christians once resided in these places. Now only a handful are left. We're going to see what's being done to stop this religious cleansing right after this. You're watching CBN NewsWatch. Throughout the Middle East, religious minorities are the target of ethnic cleansing. Jews, Christians, Yazidis, and others are threatened with extinction. Gary Lane brings us this look at their increasing persecution and possible annihilation.
December 2010, Tunisians ignited a spark leading to the so-called Arab Spring, fueling hope that freedom and democracy would spread rapidly throughout the Middle East. Those hopes, however, became dashed as the dream turned into a nightmare. In Egypt, Muslim Brotherhood rule led to burned churches and bloodshed. The rise of the Islamic State followed with even greater atrocities, spreading to Iraq and Syria. Minority faiths, now considered infidels, were forced to convert to Islam, pay a jizya tax, or face death. Many Christians, Jews, Yazidis, and moderate Muslims chose to flee. Hillary Miller of the U.S. Commission on International Religious Freedom argues that now, outside of Israel, Jews have all but disappeared from the Middle East.
At its height in the 1940s, the Jewish community of Egypt numbered at 80,000. 80,000. Today, there are fewer than 10 Jews residing between Alexandria and Cairo.
75 years ago, a community of 50,000 Jews thrived and prospered in Syria. Today, no Jews remain. Miller reports that's also happened in Yemen, home to the Houthi militia.
Today, from an ancient community nearly 2,000 years old, which at its peak numbered at 55,000 Jews, one Jew remains in Yemen. His name is Libby Marhabi, and he has languished in Houthi prison since 2016. His crime? Attempting to carry a Torah scroll from Yemen to Israel.
Historically, Christians in Syria and Iraq number between 3 to 4 million. Today, however, their population has dwindled to around 300,000 in each country. Carmela Borishan, the director of the Sussex Evangelistic Association, believes that although ISIS is no longer a significant threat in northern Iraq, its outdated 7th century mentality still lingers. CBN News spoke with her at this summer's Coptic Solidarity Conference.
I was going to ask you if you consider it genocide. What is happening?
It is very subtle ethnic cleansing that is covered really well. A lot of Western world don't see it because they are protecting the patriarchs.
Iraq's Yazidi minority faith group is facing a critical decline. The United Nations reports that ISIS killed nearly 5,000 Yazidis and kidnapped at least 7,000 women and girls. 10 years later, 3,000 Yazidi females remain in captivity. Jamila Nazo, president of the Canadian Yazidi Association, faults the international community for not doing enough to rescue them.
I sit with these mothers and they show me photos of their kids and they say they're in this house, in this community, on this street, in this village in Iraq. And there's nothing we can do to get them because there's no political will on any fronts.
In June, tragedy struck the Christian community in Syria when armed jihadists opened fire and detonated a suicide vest at St. Elias Church. Located on the outskirts of Damascus, the attack occurred as Christians gathered for worship. A total of 24 people were killed, leaving the Christian community in mourning and shock. This incident raises an important question following last year's fall of the Assad regime and the appointment of Ahmed el-Shara as president. Was this a rare occurrence, or is the threat of annihilation for Syria's Christian minority growing? Will Ahmed el-Shara's HTS government make a difference?
El-Shara himself may turn out to be a wolf in sheep's clothing, but he said a lot of the right things to date. But some of the things that are happening really do not inspire confidence.
After the massacre of minority Alawites and others last March, and in light of the deaths of over 1,000 minority Druze in tribal violence in southern Syria last month, el-Shara turned to Turkish President Erdogan for military assistance. He requested military equipment and training to help protect religious minorities. Ryan Morrow from the Capital Research Center is skeptical of Western leaders who speak as if el-Shara won an election. That's because if he were to hold an election today, Morrow says it's likely he would lose because both religious minorities and Muslim extremists dislike him.
So who's left? Oh, the Muslim Brotherhood? Maybe he's moving in that direction because it's been so successful. No, they're not going to accept him either because he's talking about normalizing ties with Israel. And even if it's a trick, he's gone way too far. He's taken a step beyond what they would even say is permissible by deception.
The question remains of who will protect the Middle East religious minorities from annihilation. Many Syrian Christians turn to God rather than governments to shield them from jihadist attacks. Additionally, a Syrian International Council representative, Asherena Abraham, suggests that Western leaders must urgently intervene before it's too late.
We cannot have meaningful conversations about protecting Christians if we are not listening to genuine Christian voices. If we remain silent now, this pattern of murder and injustice will continue until the very last Assyrian in Syria is dead or gone, and every road of our homeland is once more fractured and regimes continue to pave over our freshly dead, bloody bodies. A community who still speaks the language of Jesus and whose evangelistic force spread Christianity from India to China will be a footnote in history.
Gary Lane, CBN News.
Coming up, another sign of God moving among young people in America and another gospel and worship event, this time at the University of Pittsburgh. We're going to bring you this story when we come back. You are watching CBN NewsWatch. Student athletes at the University of Pittsburgh report the presence of God at an evangelistic event last week. Nearly 600 people attended Pit for Jesus, where they worshiped and heard the gospel. More than 65 gave their lives to Christ. 80 were baptized. Others found, quote, freedom from addictions and strongholds. Pitt's Purpose, the group that hosted the event, is led by student athletes who hold weekly Bible studies and prayer meetings. And the group's founder told CBN News he attributes the movement's momentum to the openness of students. You can learn more about what happened and what could be ahead at cbnnews.com. Time now for your Thursday Thankful. I want to leave you with this prayer of gratitude today. God, today I ask for nothing. I simply thank you for everything. I'll add to that. If I lost everything and didn't have anything and Jesus was my only thing, then I still have everything. With that prayer of gratitude, make this a thankful Thursday and be sure to have yourself a wonderful rest of the week. That's going to do it for this edition of CBN NewsWatch. You can find more of our news programs on the CBN News channel at any time. You can also find them online. That address is cbnnews.com. We'd love to know what you think about the stories you've seen here today or any day this week. You can email us, newswatch@cbn.com. You can also reach out and touch us on Facebook, Instagram, and X. We'll see you right back here, same time tomorrow. Goodbye and God bless.